Buenos dias y saluti por tutti. That's here's the you. Today I want to talk about street vendors. I often hear them come up as a topic of conversation amongst the raza. Oftentimes, it's because the raza is outraged at the treatment they receive from business owners and other members of the community. Oftentimes, they're robbed, they're extorted. If someone from outside our ethnic group does it, it's exceptionally outraging. Kind of a case of, hey, this is my family, so I can mistreat them, but you can't. I recently saw a story out of San Diego that was to the effect of captains of industry, sports franchises, and a who's who of San Diego's elite were going to come to the city council and demand they crack down on street vendors, in particular around tourist destinations like the Gaslamp District and there near City Hall. A lot of the wording that was used in this news article came off as dog whistles to me. It was mentioned that they were dirty. And I can imagine a mess being left behind. I've seen it. But the way it came off, again, was a dog whistle. I'll say here locally, when cruising came back, initially there was garbage left behind. You know, a box of beers, maybe a plate of food, some people were eating. Trash was left behind. And almost as fast as cruising came back, I saw raza in nice lowriders pulling out garbage bags at the end of the cruise and the raza cleaning it up so that the strip was nicer than when they were there. That's a possibility that can happen anywhere. It was a wonderful thing to see. I have separate issues about other stuff, but that was a wonderful thing to see. Oftentimes, the anchorman had to correct himself, or not correct himself, catch himself, because he wanted to say illegal alien, and he said illegal vendor. They really emphasized the illegal because it wasn't illegal for them to be there until the city council passed an ordinance not too long ago. And all these people are going to come complain that the city council is not enforcing its own ordinance. It was especially egregious that the vendors, a lot of them were in front of City Hall. The story gets interesting in that City Hall had a permitted hot dog vendor who is also of Latino descent. I don't know, I can't say he was Mexican because I don't know if he said that, but he had a last name that is not uncommon with Mexicans. I've known Mexicans who have that last name. It's a common last name. And so he said, I'm Latino, I think. I don't know if he said I'm Mexican or I'm Latino, but he said, and I can't make a sale because all the other vendors say I'm racist. He did say, look, I have a permit. If you buy from them, you're going to get worms. I don't know if that's true or if that's not. It sounded like something um, that would be offensive or harmful if you're the person on the receiving end of that. I could see how the raza would feel like this guy's saying we're dirty, that we're going to give you worms because, you know, we're scratching our ass while we cook, and he uses gloves because he has a permit. I'm sure someone has scratched their ass that has a permit and don't have a permit when they're cooking. There's a story that my friends tell. You know, when they were younger, late teens, they worked at this restaurant. And Sacramento used to have this thing called the Dixieland Jazz Jubilee. And they were like, man, we would get so wasted when this came around because we were partying too while we were working. And one of them was like, man, one time it was hella hot. I was like sick, so I took off my shirt. And I was drinking, trying to kill the thing, and hella sweating. He goes, but I was cooking for the whole fucking crowd of people coming in. And I was like, oh, man, that's nasty. I'm glad I didn't go eat there. This is a permitted restaurant where people paid big bucks to go, and that's what's going on in the back. So, again, it seemed like some dog whistles, but the permitted hot dog vendor was raza. He was just more Americanized and apparently used to navigating the bureaucracy of business ownership in San Diego. Because he was the only permitted hot dog vendor, I don't know if it was just because of this or whatever else he did. You know, maybe he had landscaping in the mornings or some, you know, service. But he was able to afford to live in lovely San Diego, raise a family, raise kids, send them off to school. His wife worked with him selling hot dogs. They made a good living. Now, the story said that initially there was 30, then 70, and now 100 street vendors who don't have permits showing up to the gas lamp district, downtown, City Hall areas on the weekends and especially around big events. The news story, in addition to saying they were dirty, the guy said a lot of these street vendors, you're not going to say nothing to them because they're really scary. No, he didn't say a lot of them. He just said these street vendors, you know, they're really scary. You can't say anything to them for reasons I won't go into. So we're scary, we're dirty, and we're illegal. And I'm not a street vendor, you know, I'm speaking because we don't know these people aren't here legally. I mean, they're illegal vendors, but there's connotations to that word when you're talking about raza. And there's no way you can tell if someone is here legally or not just by looking at them. My mom preferred to speak Spanish. Her English had a heavy accent, and was broken. The way your vocal cords develop according to the sounds you make. And once they're developed, there's other sounds you can't make because you didn't grow up using those sounds. For Mexicans, at least my mom, she never used woo, the W. It's not common. So whenever she would try to say woodland, she would say woodland. And sometimes my siblings weren't too kind about it, but it was something cute to me. And she was a U.S. citizen. You could look at my mom. How would you know she's not a U.S. citizen? She doesn't speak English. And so people don't know, but this dog whistle was being used. And those were the things I didn't like. As much as I didn't like that permitted hot dog vendor saying, you'll get worms if you eat from them, I do appreciate that he followed all the rules. He was operating his business within the law, and he felt at a disadvantage competing against people who did not jump through the same hoops that he did for the right to be in that spot. Now, in the video, everybody was just about cracking down on the street vendors. I think that if that person who's the only permitted hot dog vendor really wants a solution, it should include him being comfortable with other permitted street vendors in the area. And the city should create a pathway for other people to go through the rigors of inspections and tests for the right to be there. At the same time, those street vendors that are there without permits, illegally, they're providing a service because people are coming to them. I'm sure they do take some business from the restaurants in the gas lamp. But here locally, I go to street vendors. On the weekends, there's a lot of them, 2, 3, 4 in a row, just lining streets. And I try them out. And I can tell you that a lot of the people I see there aren't going to restaurants like those in the gas lamp. They can't afford them, or they just rather spend their money on something else. I can appreciate people in the gas lamp wanting the order that is associated with Western culture. A bunch of street vendors yelling and competing for customers clashes with that Western culture. And imposing it on epicenters of Western culture creates conflict. In my community, I encourage people from wealthy communities to skip a day at a nice restaurant in their nice community and come explore the taco stands with me in South Sacramento. I often encourage people to do that. Around the corner from me, there's this like Asian restaurant, and they got this food market where they got people selling tacos, black folks selling soul food, Vietnamese folks selling Vietnamese food, Japanese, Chinese. Like it's organic too. The city isn't sponsoring this. It's not a neighborhood association, a neighborhood business district. None of that. It's just came together organically. When I see folks advertising food fairs patterned after Asian food markets in trendy districts, I'm like, this has already been happening over here and it's more authentic. I encourage people to come this way. And so I think the city of San Diego could also find a place where street vendors who maybe don't have the capacity to navigate the permitting process can feel comfortable peddling their food and wares to those who are willing and happy to come try them. There's a compromise beyond just cracking down on them, take their cards, and get them. And again, it's supposed to be the who's who of San Diego. This isn't, some kid of another ethnicity robbing a street vendor. This is the power of industry and business collectively coming against street vendors, and it could be a win-win. It could be a win-win from the city is what I'm saying. There's things they can do to help some of those vendors become permitted, and the ones that aren't, to keep providing the service they're providing, because if people didn't want to buy their stuff, they would not exist. That benefits the city somehow. I don't know how. Maybe that's why they look the other way. But yeah, I guess that's it. I thought the story was a little bit different than the one I generally hear in the conversations I see from Raza about it. And I think those are good conversations too. I'm not knocking them. I appreciate folks who speak up and share the stories of them suffering. I especially love the videos from like, I think his name is Juixo or something like that, where he goes to street vendors and he buys them out. And then not only does he buy them out, like he'll take their little paleta cart, throw it in the back of his truck, and then take the street vendor to like the Gold Cup from Mexico, and he got him a shirt, and then he'll take other ones to like Disneyland. So all that is beautiful. The standing up and GoFundMe to reimburse vendors who are robbed, had their carts knocked over, were mistreated by entitled people who thought they were somehow better than them and putting them down. All that is wonderful. I'm not knocking any of it. Well, I will knock people who, when someone of another ethnicity does it, attempts to paint everyone of that ethnicity as being somehow responsible for the actions of individuals from their group, and doing it to rally people around themselves. That happens too. And that type of advocacy, yeah, I'm cool with all that. But everything else, as far as like the humanity of looking out for them, it's all cool. It's all great. I'm sharing this because I think it adds another dimension to the conversation, and hopefully people run with it, because I'd be curious to see what they think. Anyways, have a good one. Much love. And it's almost the middle of the week. Later.